Howdy, folks, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Nerdstalgic with me, your host, Luke. And today is another So I Finally episode. And on today's episode, I finally got around to playing and finishing Psychonauts 2. Haven't completely finished it. There's a few little niggles and two little collectibles in here and there that I've got to collect. But overall, I've completed the main game, 100%ed it, done. So I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to basically express not just my love for this franchise, but why this game is, and I will happily go on record and being quoted as this, as the best game I have played in a long time, and the most enjoyment I have gotten out of a game in a very, very long time. Like general laughs, like just being so amused and being so happy and being so carefree. It's just a joyous experience, and I'll get onto it as we get into it. But first, I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction about how the game, give you history and stuff like that. So the game is made by Double Fine, and it is written by amazing game director Tim Schafer. You might recognize his name. He is responsible for some of the best video games there is. One of my favorites being Brutal Legend. I love that. Costume Quest, again, I never played the second one, but I loved the first Costume Quest. I played that on Xbox Arcade back in the day on the 360. But he's an absolute legend in the gaming space. He's made some incredible games, and Psychonauts is basically his baby. Now, obviously, with my history with Psychonauts, the first game came out in 2005. When it came out, it was for the original Xbox. I never played it when it first came out, if I'm being completely honest. I didn't play it till later on in life, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, when it became backwards compatible on the Xbox. Then I went back and played it, and absolutely had a joyous moment there. But I remember when I first saw the Psychonauts genre. No, well, could it call it a genre? No, the Psychonauts video game series. On a demo disc. I had a demo disc because that's a bit of a flashback, taking you back, in a bit of a side quest here. But if you remember, back in the day, you used to go shop and buy a thing that was called a magazine, and in that magazine, you sometimes had stickers and stuff like that. But you always used to buy like the Xbox or PlayStation magazine because it would give you a demo disc, and basically it is what it is. Says on the tin, you put the disc into your Xbox or your PlayStation, and it would start playing. And it would have like a list of games on it, and it would have trailers and stuff like that. And the demo disc I had for the original Xbox, again, I've mentioned this before in prior episodes, but because it was my dad's, my dad really only bought the games that he wanted, but I wanted to play more games. So my way of actually playing more games without spending loads and loads of money, because I think the magazines were like under a fiver, so they won a lot of money, was by demo discs. And I absolutely adore demo discs. Still to this day, I have nostalgia and I miss them greatly. I miss demos in general. We don't really get demos anymore, but that's a discussion for another day. But I remember getting this demo disc, and I don't remember any of the games on it or anything like that, but what I do remember quite vividly, that there was, in the trailer section, was a trailer for Psychonauts, the first game. And I remember playing that trailer over and over again, just watching it, because I was just blown away about the concept and the idea of that this is what a video game could be. Because up until this point, video games that I had seen, what my dad had, were mostly action orientated, like Area 51, that sort of a game where it was first person shooter, crazy, dark, chilling, Halo, Aliens, that sort of thing. So I never really knew that a video game could be like that. And I always wanted to play it and get it, but never did. And I eventually did years and years later. Like I said, late teens, early 20s, and I played it, and it was a joyous experience. I don't think I've had much of a laugh and much of a connection with the characters, because that's what Psychonauts is. Psychonauts is more of a story than it is a game. The most enjoyment you'll get out of actually not just Psychonauts 1, but Psychonauts 2, is the conversations you have with the characters. It's the characters that make it. For example, one of my favorite characters from Psychonauts 1 is a guy called Dougal. And he is like a very schizophrenic sort of child who's very sort of scared of the wind, that sort of kid. Anytime there's a breeze, sort of thing. But as you get to know him and get to talk to him, you realize that what he's scared of is that because of these psychic abilities, he's terrified that he's going to blow somebody's head up. Um, and that's what he has a constant fear. So he wears this like tinfoil hat on his head, and he's constantly looking, making sure that no one's around me. Nothing scares me. I'm not panicked, because any moment I get too excited or get too panicked, I'm going to like lose control, and everybody's head's going to blow up. He owns money just killing squirrels, but even so, he's a very interesting, funny character, and you meet loads of characters like that in the first Psychonauts game, and I get a real enjoyment out of that, where it's very the gameplay is second, but the story and the narratives. I'm a very story-oriented person. You could have a gameplay that's terrible, but if the story's good, I'll stick around and I will play it. You know what I mean? It's the same if the game was glitchy and broken. As long as I can get to the end and I can still get the gist of the story, again, that's completely fine with me. For other people, it's like the gameplay's got to be there. Don't know how good the story's got to be. If the gameplay's not there, then they're not interested. For me, I'm there as long as the story's there. And with Psychonauts, it was there in troves. And like I said, you have to. Well, you don't have to dig for it. The overall story is fantastic. But if you just go off and you talk to people, you don't really need to talk to any of them. You could just follow the main storyline and still get an enjoyable moment out of it. But if you go around talking to the other campmates and the uh, tutors, if you go talk to them, you learn who they are and their different sort of psychic abilities and what they can do and what they can't do. It's very, very fascinating. That's what I loved about the first Psychonauts game. So when they announced that they were going to make a Psychonauts 2, I was over the moon, because myself and a lot of people came to the assumption that Psychonauts wasn't like, there wasn't going to be a sequel. I mean, there wasn't going to be anything more. And then eventually it got announced that they're making a Psychonauts 2. But before that, well, actually, no, they announced them, they announced Psychonauts 2, that they're going to make, that was in development, but that was in development hell for a long, long time. And if I remember correctly, so Psychonauts 1 came out in 2005. The first game flopped, sadly, but it made a comeback in 2011, because if I remember correctly, Double Fine and Tim Schafer bought back the rights to the first game from the I can't remember the company. I think it starts with an M. I want to say Majestic, but I'm not sure. But the company that owned the rights to Psychonauts, Tim Schafer and the team at Double Fine bought back the rights, and then sort of packaged and sold Psychonauts 1 digitally on Steam and stuff like that, so that people could play it. And that sort of brought the resurgence. People who wanted to play it but didn't get the chance to play it sort of jumped on it, and that people who were old fans could go back and play it, and then the hype sort of came back up. And that was the whole idea of like, there's still hype there, there's still love there, let's push forward to make a Psychonauts 2. And they did, and again, like I said, it was in development hell for a very, very long time. And then in 2017, they made a sort of sequel, it's like the pre-sequel. You know what I mean? It happens after Psychonauts 1, but it's not exactly Psychonauts 2. And that was the Rhombus of Ruin. I never got to play it because it was a VR game. I think you could get it on PlayStation VR and Steam and all that. But I didn't have any VR headset, so I remember I watched Nerdcube on YouTube. He played through it, and I really, really enjoyed it. And again, I rewatched the playthrough of it before I started playing Psychonauts 2, just so I can sort of get the gist of what was going on. And then finally, Psychonauts 2, 2021, was in crowdfunding hell for a very, very, very long time. They even got to the point where they was thinking about getting rid of the boss fights. Boss fights were going to be cut just so they could get the game out in time. And that was until Xbox acquired them and then made the big announcement that their E3 showcase on June the 9th, 2019. I remember that quite vividly, because I'm a big nerd. I'm a big gaming nerd. So every year I used to watch E3. E3 is like my version of Christmas come early. Obviously, there's going to be no E3 this year, sadly, but Xbox is still doing their gamer showcase. But anyway, that's not the point. I remember watching it live, and then Phil Spencer basically brought Tim Schafer out and announced that they had acquired Double Fine, and I was over the moon, because like I said, Double Fine's one of them studios that have so much potential, not just in creative potential, but story. You know what I mean? For what they do with their games, and each one of their game is different. They always reinvent, always create. They just go into so much detail. I love their games, but the problem has always been the games is the fact of funding. You know what I mean? You could always tell, like, they want to go in a direction and they want to be as creative and bombastic as possible, but the funding is not always there. That's the feeling I get. I don't know that for sure. Don't quote me for it, but that's just the feeling I always got. Was the fact of they've got to the brink. This game's going to be epic, but they have to pull back a little bit, and certain features can't be in there because of money. Like I said, one of my favorite games is Brutal Legend. I replayed Brutal Legend so many times. There were even many times that I would put the game on and not play it at all. I would get into my Druid plow, which was a big, beefy hot rod that they gave you, and I would get in that car and I would put the radio on and I would sit and just listen to the classic heavy metal, you know, like Black Sabbath and that. I would just listen to it because I just loved the soundtrack. Was incredible. Playing as Jack Black and like killing demons was amazing. The whole rock and roll aesthetic was incredible. And growing up and being very much into rock and roll and hardcore metal and stuff like that. Um, for me, it was like a comfort blanket. It just felt like the game that I needed. It felt like the game that I'd always wanted. And adding Jack Black, who doesn't love Jack Black, was amazing. And that game, I feel like, needs a sequel. So when Xbox announced that they had acquired Double Fine and that they were going to make Psychonauts 2, I was over the moon. But then my mind was going, they've got to make a Brutal Legend 2. Everybody says, like, if you ever mention Brutal Legend in front of anybody, majority of the time you're going to find that they love Brutal Legend. They had an absolute blast of Brutal Legend. It's a great game. I would love a sequel, even a remaster. I'd happily go and buy a remaster because I just want to play that game again, and I can through backwards compatible. But I would just love to experience that, go back into that world, see how it's evolved, see how it's changed. You know what I mean? I would, for example, Jack Black's character. You know, you could even do it where he's sitting in the future, and you could be. He's really old and grizzled, and he has a big beard. You know what I mean? And maybe the next generation of rock or the Titans come back to life or something like that. There's many things that they could do. Obviously, this is not a review about Brutal Legend, but as you can tell, I love Double Fine, and so when it was announced that they were being bought and acquired, I was over the moon, and I still am. And after playing Psychonauts 2, and I promise I'll get onto the review in a minute and I'll stop waffling. But from playing Psychonauts 2 and just seeing what they do when they have a budget, because that's what Xbox did. Xbox basically acquired them and gave them creative freedom. Was like, take as much time as you need. You've got all the funding, all the backing in the world. Take your time. Go forth and prosper. You know what I mean? And they did. And they went back into the workshop and they just pumped out one of the most polished. Like, granted, they were like, what I've read through research. There were a few small sort of glitches where like certain achievements wouldn't pop, but apart from that, they sort of published one of the most polished, fun, inventive, creative, bombastic game I have ever played. The last game I played where I had this much fun was the Guardians of the Galaxy game that came out. I think it was last year. I enjoyed that game a lot. That's another game that I hope for a sequel to. But this is one of the best games. Before this, the last best game I ever played was Metro Exodus, and I think Metro Exodus was 2019, before the pandemic. So that was quite a while ago. So it's been a while, but a good few years since I've actually played a game where I've loved it so much that I can't find anything wrong with it. And obviously, I played it quite recently, so all the glitches and all the little niggles and stuff like that were gone. Like, they weren't there. So I had a really lovely filtered experience where there was no issues, and I could just enjoy the game the way it was meant to be enjoyed. Yeah, like I said, Double Fine, incredible studio, and I can't wait to see what they do next. But onto the review. That's what you've come for, really. You've come to listen to my thoughts and feelings of Psychonauts 2. You can probably already tell, because I've let it slip many times already, that I not just love Double Fine, I not just love Tim Schafer, but I love this series and I love this game. So it's going to be a very positive one. Um, like honestly, there's only one little thing that really bothered me, but I will get onto it. But yeah, let's get onto the review, shall we? Stop my babbling. Right, so the review. Basically, my plans for the review is I'm going to split it up into a few sections. So, first section, this bit you're going to be listening to in a minute, is story. Then you've got the game design. Then you've got collectibles, and then you'll have my overall feelings of the game. Now, obviously, as you could probably guess, my overall feelings of the game is very, 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 very positive. But for this part is about the story. I can't really talk much about the story, mainly because every single bit of this story is a spoiler. Um, and not even just a spoiler. It's just the fact of, as I mentioned for the first Psychonauts 2, I mean, the first Psychonauts, is that in Psychonauts 2, um, the whole idea of talking to people, getting to know the characters, is very, very important. So even me giving in small little bits of details here and there, little snippets, I feel like would not ruin the experience, but wouldn't give you the full sort of surprise, like, oh my god, that revelation's amazing, or that revelation's funny. I wouldn't want to ruin any jokes, and I wouldn't want to ruin any little sort of key moments, even with the small snippets of detail. So I can't really talk about the story. But what I can say is that I put 23 hours and 44 minutes into this game, and I'm still not finished. I've still got a few collectibles here and there to collect, but my time playing as Rasputin Aquata, Raz, has been overly positive. What they did here with the story blows me away. Absolutely, just completely. There was so many twists and turns. And one of the things I love about this, there's many things I love about this game, but one of the many things that I love about this game is that I never knew where I was going. I never knew what was going to happen. And that's what I love about this game. I know what I love about many other games. I feel like games don't really do much anymore. Is that games set things up and they just tell you straight away, this is what you're going to be doing, this is who you are, that's it. That's all your expose. Go forth, right? But I prefer a game where I know nothing. I prefer a game where you get hints of a story, but you don't know where that story's going to go. It's not predictable at all. And in a game like Psychonauts, where you're going into other people's minds and you're into other people's brains, and you seeing, because everybody's brain's different, and because everybody has different brains, everybody's version of what their mental fortress is different. So you go into a dentist's brain, it's full of teeth and it's really gushy and horrible. But you go into like a rock star's brain, and it could be very heavy metal or it could be very psychedelic. You don't know. The point is I'm trying to make is the fact of, with this game and this story, you never knew where you stood, but in a good way. It's like you wanted not to know until you had to know. Like, again, like I said, you go into people's minds. So when you go into people's minds and you learn their secrets, you learn the little dark thoughts or the things that they're hiding. Um, Again, each one's like a very like, oh my god, that's incredible. Oh, I wondered why they were keeping that secret, or that part of themselves they were keeping hidden away. And that was one of the things that I enjoyed so much about this story, is just the fact of not knowing what the hell's going on. The twists and turns blew me away. Even all the way to the end, I was like, oh my god, at the very, very end, I was just like, what? And this is why I'm so hyped for a sequel, is because the story doesn't end on a cliffhanger, but because the story was so enjoyable, and because um, the story ends so well, like I said, there's no cliffhanger, there's nothing like that. The end just ends perfectly. That if they didn't make a sequel, fine. Like if they didn't make a third game, I would be upset, but I could happily put my hands up and say, you know what, fair enough. I enjoyed my time with the Psychonauts. I enjoyed my time with Raz. That's fine. That's how complete the story is. I could easily put my hand up and go, you know what, I would like one, but if you don't do one, that's okay. And that's how I just feel about the story. Like I wish I could go into it, but like this is one of those games that if I just talk about it a little bit, I could ruin it. So I don't want to. For anybody, because generally it's such a joyous experience. But what I will talk about is kind of to do with the story, but it hasn't got anything to it. Well, it has got a lot to do with the story, but I can talk about it freely without ruining the story. This game deals with mental health and the effects it has on the human brain fantastically. I've talked about it many times myself. I suffer with mental health issues. I've suffered from depression in the past. I suffer from loneliness currently. Um, I've dealt with I deal with anxiety at times. We've all had stresses. We've all had issues in our lives, and we've all gone to well, hopefully not all, but there's a chance the majority of us have gone to moments inside our brains where we've just gone so deep and dark that we felt like we'd never be able to get out of that pit. We all deal with mental health, and I've said this many times. Um, Everybody deals with it. If it's very mild or it's very high and strong, there's different cases of mental health and how we deal with it as people and how we present it to others and how we present it to ourselves. Um, there's different sort of levels, but we all deal with it. And one thing I love about this game is that just before you even start it, there's a big sort of text box that comes up and just says like, this game deals with certain sort of mental health issues. Some things might be triggering for you. So it just gives you a warning off the bat, like we are going to go into some very sort of deep um, mental health sort of topics, and if it's going to hurt you or affect you, we recommend you either not play or make sure that you're in a sort of more comfortable and more say even healthier sort of mental state, and then come back and play when you're ready. And I thought that was really nice. I thought that was just a very sort of beautiful thing. Because usually I don't read those things. I don't read them because majority of the time it's always it it's something that's not really relevant to me. But when it came up and it was about the mental health advisory, because I was interested, because I already knew this game was going to deal with mental health, but when it came up, I sat and read it, and I thought that was really nice of them to do. They didn't have to do it, but because they did do it, it just gives them more praise, and it was just really nice. Even books have started doing it now. But like, again, I will happily read a book no matter what the topic, apart from romance. I'll stick away from romance. But even books and nowadays are starting to do it, where like, if you go out and buy a book and it has very traumatic or very sort of graphic sort of scenes, at the beginning of the book it goes, this might be a trigger warning for X, Y, and Z. So I was just happy that they put that in. But as I mentioned, every brain is different. Everybody's brain is different. Even though all of our brains look the same, we think and feel differently. And the way some characters are dealing with certain issues and the way the game deals with it, was really lovely. You have one character, which is not, I wouldn't say it's really spoiler, but there's this one level that you go to, and there's a character that feels very lonely. There's a character that feels like nobody loves them, nobody cares. And so when you feel lonely, when you feel like nobody cares about you, what do you feel? You feel like you're on a desert island. You feel like, you're a castaway, that you are, stuck on a small island in a huge ocean. Nobody can hear you scream. Nobody knows you're there. You're on your own. You're alone. And so that's the kind of, place that this character is. They're on a sort of sandy sort of beach. And while that character's there, they've basically bottled up all their emotions. They've got all their emotions and they're bottling them up. And to represent that, as you go through the level, you find huge sort of bottles. And this also adds into the fact that the character is going through alcohol abuse as well. The character is an alcoholic, and the mental effects of drinking and stuff like that. So it's also not just the alcoholic state, but it's also the fact of the idea of when you don't bottle up emotions. So you have to uncork these bottles, go into the bottles, and you have to sort of find what that character's bottling up and try their best to help sort of rectify and come to terms with whatever emotion they're bottling up. And that's just one small example. I'm trying my best to not spoil anything, but there's many moments of this throughout the game where it deals with loneliness, deals with loss, deals with bottled up emotions, deals with fear, deals with anxiety. Um, you know, dealing with loss of loved ones, loss of friends, loss of fear of failure, of actual real life failure. Raz is dealing with stuff himself. The characters around him are dealing with stuff themselves. It just proves that even the strongest of people that you meet are also incredibly flawed. And even some of the people who are the most happiest have some of the most darkest um, skeletons in the closet. You know what I mean? And that's true for real life. Is the fact that whenever you meet anybody in real life, you're only meeting the version that they want you to see. Everybody wears a mask. Coming back to the whole sort of that quote that everybody knows. Everybody wears a mask. I wore a mask for a very, very long time, and then I went into therapy, and I decided that I no longer want to wear the mask, and I no longer wear a mask. I am who I am, and when I go out in the world, you meet me as I am. I always tell people I am the real article. What you see is what you get. If you don't like it, you don't like it. If you like it, great, we can be friends. I no longer wear a mask, but majority of people do wear a mask. And it's that idea of when you go out into the world, you don't know who you're meeting. You might go out and meet Sarah. Sarah's a lovely person. When you meet her, you have a really good time, have a laugh, have a joke. Sarah's great, fantastic. When Sarah goes home and she's alone or she's with people that she's comfortable with, Sarah takes that mask off. And Sarah's no longer the happy, bubbly, confident person you know. Sarah could have anxiety. Sarah could have depression. You know, Sarah could be dealing with things um, that are. So I don't want to get fully into it, but like there could be things that are not really, really nice. But because she's out and about, she has to put a brave face on and pretend like there's nothing wrong. And that's the point I'm trying to get is the fact, and this is one of the things that this game deals with fantastically. It's the fact of everybody's different, and everybody deals with mental health differently. Some people bottle it up. Some people hide it away. Some people just let it all hang out. And who's to say which one's the most healthiest? I can probably tell you some of those are not healthy. But the point is the fact that we all deal with mental health, and just the way this game sort of goes and deals with it is just incredible. I haven't seen a game deal with mental health this well ever. But it does, and it does it fantastically, and I have to praise it for that. I really, really do. I wish I could talk about the story. I really could, but I can't because again, spoilers. But I just hope that this little sort of explanation here gives you an idea of what this story deals with, and the kind of concepts you'll be looking into. Like I said, you're a psychonaut. You're going to be going into other people's brains. You're going to be experience other people's emotions, other people's feelings. Like I said, everybody's brain's different. We all think differently. And that sort of leads me on to my next topic, which is the game design, the world building, the platforming, and how each brain's different and how that affects the game design. So let's get on to the game design, shall we? So, on to the game design and the world building. Just like I said, every brain is unique. So is each level. And because of that, whenever you go in, again, trying my best not to spoil any stories, but as I said, with that character who is very much alone, who feels like they are, on a desert island, you will go to a desert island setting where you have to sort of travel from little small island to small island, finding these bottles. And also the idea of like when people bottle up emotions, it's actually a bottle that you go into, a real physical huge bottle that you have to uncork and go in. You know what I mean? And there's loads of little moments like that. One of my favorite levels, not just for the aesthetics, but also for the mad craziness of it. Again, won't go into story beats or spoilers, no matter how much I want to. But there's one level where I will use the word trippy and psychedelic. It's like, you remember the Beatles? Everybody remembers the Beatles. It's very much Yellow Submarine. Yeah, the best way I can explain it. If you know what I'm talking about, if you know the poster or you know the song Yellow Submarine, it's very much that. It's very much like if I was on LSD, that's what I would see. you know, um, it's one of those. I'm trying my best to explain it without sort of spoilers. But like it's one of those sort of levels that when you go into it, because of what the character's dealing with and from their past experiences, um, it was very, very fun to go through it. And like I said, it adds onto the story of not knowing where it's going. At one moment I'm here, the next moment I am in a psychedelic sort of hippies dream world. And that's how the game works with the game design. You go from level to level, and you never know what the world's going to be. Like one moment you could be in psychedelic, for some people a nightmare, other people a dream, and for the next minute I'm in a futuristic, rundown apocalyptic sort of world that's run by germs and bacteria. You know what I mean? And the art style changes. The art style never. When you go into other people's brains, the art style changes all the time. So when you're in the main world, when you're just in the hub world, as I'll call it, the art style is amazing. The game is beautiful, but the art style will always stay the same. Then when you go into other people's brains and you see sort of their emotions, the way they think, and the things that bother them, um, then you will sort of get the art style will change completely. And like I said, one minute I'm in a very sort of hyper realistic sort of apocalyptic world that's run by germs. Next minute I'm in an acid trip. Next minute I'm on a desert island. Um, Next minute I'm in like a really fleshy, horrible. Well, I was going to say Geiger-esque sort of thing, but it's not as bad as Geiger. Um, but very much sort of fleshy and loads of teeth and horrible. Um, but again, that just matters on the character, and they all work fantastically. Each one of them sort of makes the world building's done in such a fantastic way that it doesn't just complement the narrative, but it also bolsters the narrative, and also it bolsters the whole idea of platforming. This game is a platformer. Psychonauts is a platforming game. I'm not very big into platforming, but like I said, because the narrative's so good and because the world building reflects and bolsters the narrative so well, that I will happily do the platforming. And this is one of the very few platforming games I generally sort of really, really enjoy and will happily play until the end. Um, One of the things I realized as I was playing this, it reminded me of a game. And this was another favorite game of mine, that I really, really, really enjoyed, which is another game I'd love a sequel to, which I really fingers crossed they do, was Control by Remedy. Um, Anybody who's ever played Control might be a bit confused. Um, in Control, again, I ain't going to get into it, it's a completely different game, but you're in sort of this hub sort of building, and the levels are constantly changing. You never know where the story's going to go. You get sort of psychotic, like telekinesis, stuff like that. You get sort of like mind powers in the game, and there's a lot of platforming and like in that game shooting. There's no shoot. Well, there is shooting. You get side blasts. You kind of shoot people with like mental sort of projections from your brain, which I'll get onto that when we get to combat. But this game, like Psychonauts 2, reminded me of Control, just a lot more brighter. Whereas Control is a lot more heavy, dark, um, sort of gameplay, where this is very much sort of light, but the mystery's still there. There's a mystery going on in Control. You never really know what's going on. There's a mystery there, and there's twists and turns, and it's the same with this game. There's twists and turns, there's mysteries, and you just don't know what's happening. And it's not just the fact of the brains that you go into. It's also like I said, the main world. So you have the hub world, you have the mother load, or mother lobe as it's called, because the brain and obviously all the mental stuff happens at the frontal lobe. So you get it, mother lobe, big brain, really silly sort of thing, but I love it. So you got the mother lobe, which is the sort of headquarters of the Psychonauts, and then when you go outside, you got this quarry. There's a platforming to do, and there's platforming to do inside the building as well. One of my favorite places in all of Psychonauts 2, and I love it for two reasons, is the questionable area. Right, the reason I love this area for two reasons. One, it's crazy. Like the place is insane. It's like, imagine, we don't really get it here in the UK, but I know in America it's quite popular. But um, if you was to do like a travel, like car journey from state to state, that on your long drives you will probably find roadside attractions. World's biggest frying pan. World's biggest ball of chewing gum. World's biggest rubber ball, that sort of thing. Think of all those wacky, crazy side attractions on the side of the road, all in one in a forest, right? So you take that, then I don't know. Again, this might be a thing of, I don't know if many people have watched it, but if you ever watch Gravity Falls on on the Disney Channel, um, If you haven't, highly recommend it. It's on Disney Plus. Check it out. It's incredible. But if you play Disney, not Disney, if you play Gravity Falls, you will be in love with this place. Then that's what this place reminded me of. It reminded me of Gravity Falls. You know, the level design was great. Like you had a waterfall that traveled up, so you know, you had logs that would travel up and over, which again made no sense. And then you had like called the funiculator, which is like a tram but was incredibly slow. So I couldn't really imagine it was much fun. You had the I think they called it the haunted um, water wheel, and it was just a water wheel that sort of traveled back like really fast. And then you had like the really cheap ones that sort of like made no sense at all. So like I think it was called the Cyclops, like PSY, like sort of like psychic sort of Cyclops, and how like they try to say like, oh, this Cyclops is in this area, kind of like the idea of Bigfoot, that sort of thing, and um, trying to say the idea like, you know, he was having like huge kaiju battles with Nessie, stuff like that, trying to best like, you know, get money out of you. But again, it was just really fun, this whole area just to explore, to go into the trees, to um, what's the word platform from place to place, finding collectibles, finding side cards and stuff like that. Really enjoyable. And that's kind of there's a big story point to go in there as well. But forget about the story. Like you can just go in there and just explore. Like there's loads of small little areas that just allow you to explore. And this, I hate to use Shrek, but this game is like an onion. You know what I mean? You just look at it and you you admire it for what it is, and then you start to peel and you realize, oh, there's a bit more. Oh, there's a bit more. There's a bit more there, and you just peel off more and more layers, and you can just see how the fact of when you give a team that's so creative as this, is so imaginative and so incredible, a budget and free reign, and you just tell them to just go for it. This is the kind of stuff that you get. You get polish, you get level design, you get an incredible story, you get incredible world building. Everything just complements each other. You know, the world building complements the narrative complements everything else. The platforming just works. The animations are fantastic. The art styles, the bombastic, crazy twists all make sense. Everything about everything just complements each other. And this is what I, again, one of the many reasons I just love this game is the fact that there was never a moment of me being bored. Like what? Here you go. The best example I could give you of how good this game is that when I play a game, I will always have YouTube or an audiobook playing, right? Whether it be, you know, a racing game to for example, you know, first game comes to mind, Doom. No matter what game I'm playing, whether it be shooting or driving or whatever, I'll always have an audiobook or YouTube on in the background, because I don't like just blank sort of no noise. I just like even if it's, or even the fact of music, I just like something in the background, something for me to listen to while I'm focusing. And for me, I can focus on an audiobook and YouTube and music very easily. I'm very good at multitasking. But with this game, the story was so intriguing, and there were so many twists and turns, and the level design and everything just pulled me in so much that I didn't want to listen to an audiobook. I didn't want to watch YouTube. I didn't want to listen to a podcast. I didn't want to listen to music. I wanted to switch everything off and just get lost in this world, get lost in its characters. I wanted just not just to talk. Like, I'll be honest, I will happily sit and talk to NPCs, but if you give me reams and reams of dialogue, what I put subtitles on so that I can read the dialogue before the character said it, and then skip, read the dialogue, skip, read the dialogue. But again, the voice work is so well, the story's done so well, level design, all that shabam, it's all done so well that I want to sit here and I want to listen to the reams and reams and reams of dialogue these characters have to tell me, because I'm invested, because I care about each character that I meet. Even if I only meet them for a bit, I care about them, I'm interested in them, I want to know them. You know, they're like friends. It's like, I want to sit and listen to my friends speak. I want to listen to their problems. I want to help them with their problems if I can. You know what I mean? And again, this is that thing about this game. And coming back to, I've gone off a bit. I've gone a bit on a side quest there. But coming back to the main quest, talking about the game design and the world building, it's just done so well, so fantastically. I'd never had any issues with it, and the only times I did have issues with it is the fact of when I wasn't paying attention and that I didn't, jump high enough, or like I jumped a little bit too early, and then I couldn't get my psychic balloon out and hover, so I just would like fall to my death. So majority of times it was me messing up. It was nothing to do with the game. But like I said, I just didn't know where this game was going. This game always changed its gameplay. As the world changed, the gameplay changed, which meant I had to use different abilities, which meant I had to use different ways to play the game. I had to constantly change and evolve myself as the brains and as the environments that I went in changed. Because you get abilities in this game, you get different abilities. You get I'm trying to remember. So you get clairvoyance, where you can look into people's minds. You get what's it? Pyrokinetics, pyrokinetics, I think it's called. Kind of like if you ever read the book by Stephen King, Firestarter. Very much like you can start fires. You have your psychic ball. You've got your side blast, so you can shoot people. You've got trying to think. One of my things that I liked was, I think it was called the mind connections, which is basically how there's a lot of thoughts in the air, thought bubbles in the air, and that you can travel on these thought bubbles to get to hidden areas, or you get to high levels of areas, and it kind of works with the platforming to find collectibles. So I really enjoyed that power. But you get loads of different sort of abilities, and with each ability you have to use it, differently for each level. Some levels, there's loads of platforms that move really quickly, so you have to slow down time with your freeze sort of time ability, and then you can sort of platform from platform to platform. There are moments where you have enemies that will throw things at you, so you dodge, and then you have this like psychic hand that you can grab things, and you can grab them out of air before they hit you. You can throw them back at them, or if there's stuff on the ground, you can pick that up and throw them at it. Like for example, I can't remember what they're called. I think they're called bad moods, and it's basically like a giant scribble in the air. And I'll get onto the enemies and the enemy design in a minute, but it's like a giant scribble in the air. And one of the things with that, like, you get clairvoyance, and with clairvoyance there's a reason behind it. You can find bits of collectibles and other bits of currency hidden around the world, and obviously just to have the small little thing of seeing what other people see how the other people perceive the world, again really interesting. So I never had to use it in battle. It was never an ability that I used much until I got near to the end of the game, where these bad moods started to appear. And one way to beat them is you can't shoot them, you can't hit them, they're impervious. A bad mood, there's no way of getting rid of it until you have a special window that opens up where you can get inside that bad mood, and you can see through the eyes of the bad mood, and you can see the issue that's bothering them. It's like they have like it's the way it's predicted in the game. It's like a heart that's inside of a cage. So once you've found that cage, you can then go to it, break the cage open, and then the heart will then travel to the bad mood and destroy the bad mood, so that the person feels better. That's one enemy type. Obviously, I'll get onto the enemies in a minute, but that's just what I mean is the fact of the abilities and the story and the world. It all just sort of complements each other, and this is, again, the game's just fantastic. I ain't even got into the enemies yet. I ain't got to the collectibles. All I've done is the story, the mental health effects, and the game design in the world. But I am just overjoyed about this game. It's so well done. But I will move on to the collectibles and the pins and all that kind of stuff now, because otherwise I will sit here and reiterate everything and just repeat myself, and I don't want to do that, because that's not the point of a review. I've got to move on. So we're moving on to the collectibles and the pins now. Right, so the collectibles. So in this game, the collectibles this game are figments of the imagination, vaults, and emotional baggage. I'll start with the figments. The figments are, imagine if you was really bored and you had a notepad in front of you, and you were just told just to doodle anything you want, any characters, fish, monsters, aliens, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Just doodle, right? So you told her that and said, okay, so those doodles are what you feel. So you feel so and so emotions, or because you're a doctor, or because you are a psychopath. Instead of doing whatever you wanted, you did people that were injured, or you just you know drew loads of knives or something like that. The reason I sort of bring that part up is the fact of figments in like I said, everybody's mind is different. Everybody's the way they think and the way they feel is different. So are the figments. So one level that you go to, the character is a very is a healer. Is a very much about helping people. So you go into their mind, and all of the figments in that world are people who have injuries, people who fall off roofs, people with broken arms. There'll be plasters, medikits, stuff like really medical sort of stuff. Or you go into the guy, as I mentioned, the person that feels like they're on their own and feels very lonely. They have a lot of sort of tissues, and because they're an alcoholic as well, a lot of bottles, and because they're on a desert island, a lot of the figments are hidden. So some of them look like grass, some of them look like bananas on trees, stuff like that. So again, as I mentioned prior with the narrative and stuff like that, which I promise I won't get into fully here because I've already done it enough. But the figments work with the narrative. But the whole point of the figments is that if you can collect all the figments in a level, you will. Well, they're not hard to find. Well, some of them are actually really, really hard to find. I'm missing a few. I think if I looked at my achievements on Xbox, I think I've got. Hold on a second. I think I found 95% of them. So there's only 5% left in the game, so I've got to go back and find them all. And no, my luck, they're small hidden ones that are not obvious, but it's nobody other there. I'll find them all. But once you find them all, you get a point, which then levels up your psychonaut internship rank. I think at the end of the game, I think I finished on I want to say 87 or 88. I didn't really get to 100, but like I said, I will get 100 to 102. I know I will. I believe in myself. Um, Also, you've got vaults. Vaults are one of my favorite one of my most favorite collectibles in the game, mainly because with each vault, how can I explain it? Once you find the vault, you have to chase it. Once you've chased the vault and you break it open, there'll be like a slideshow, like an arty slideshow. And like I mentioned, in everybody's brain, you hide away emotions. There's certain emotions or certain events that you don't want to relive, you don't want to think about, so you hide them away. I.e., you lock them in a vault, and you make sure that vault has legs, so anybody who tries to open it will run away from them, so they can't open them. Same sort of idea, whereas you've got to chase these vaults, open them up, and you get a little slideshow, and it gives you an extra bit of backstory into said character's mind, into certain events. Again, I ain't going to spoil any, but you get like a slideshow where you get to see certain characters, certain events that it's not clear in the main story. It's just a little bit extra backstory. Again, as a collectible should be, you're not hindered if you don't find them. Like your story or your fun of the story and narrative won't be hindered if you don't find them. But if you do take the time to go find them, then you'll have the most fun with the story. You have the better understanding. It'll be bolstered. You know a little bit extra details. You know a little bit extra story that you wouldn't know before if you didn't take the time to find them. So I really like the vaults for what they are and what they do, and the concept behind it. I really, really like it. And the final bit of collectibles are emotional baggage. Emotional baggage is, well, exactly what it sounds. Is the fact of bits of luggage, bits of like hat boxes and rucksacks and stuff like that that are found out through the level, and they're crying, emotionless, that they're in tears. Again, emotional baggage. Get it? Because they're baggage and it's emotional. Yeah, it's funny. And we all have emotional baggage. We all have things that we carry with ourselves and we take from one place to another, one partner to another, one job to the next, whatever. And the idea is that throughout the level there are tags. And if you find these tags, you can put the right tags that go with the right bags. You can reunite these tags with the baggage, and the baggage will then stop crying. That means it will get rid of the emotional baggage. Funny? Get it? Tags, emotional baggage, all funny. Yeah, silly. I know. But also, one little funny little one is that it's collected called half a brain or half brains, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a little brain with legs hidden around the level, um, that that dances. Very, very. Once you've seen one, you can't unsee it. You know what I mean? They're very easy to see, but they're hidden around. And the basic idea is, if you can find one half of a brain and find another half of the brain, those two brains will come together to make a full brain, and then that will upgrade your health, because your health is done into three separate brains. And so the more health you've got, then obviously the easier the game becomes. The game is still quite hard, but which I will get onto, but it just helps you find these extra sort of half brains, little again, small silly little collectibles. If the collectibles are silly, I'm more likely wanting to go find them, you know. And I sadly there's no achievement for finding half a brains, but I found all the half brains because again I just love watching those little things dance and finding them. It was really, really fun. Also, I think if I remember correctly, the last collectible in this game was I think they were called Notes of Wisdom. Basically they're like kind of like if you ever play Ratchet and Clank, where you used to try and find the golden, well, cogs, are they called? Golden screws. I can't remember. It's been so long since I played Ratchet and Clank. But basically, if you find these golden screws, that means you sort of found the hidden ones. That's basically the idea of it. If you find these sort of hidden bits of knowledge, you gain a skill point, which that skill point can then be spent on your psychic abilities. So the collectibles are fun. The collectibles again work their way in with the narrative. They all make sense. It all sort of coherently works, and there's a point to finding them all, because if you find, say, all the emotional luggage in a level, you get a skill point. If you find all the vaults and all the figments, you get a skill point. So it's the fact of, if you find them, you get rewarded for doing it, you know. And also the fact of, you get that sort of small gratification that you went inside of somebody's mind and you solved all their problems, you solved all their um, emotional baggage, you sort of released and helped them come to terms with the stuff that they were hiding inside the vaults. You also found their notes of wisdom, because these people are smarter than you, because like I think Raz is like 9 or 10 years old. um, so there's a lot for him still to learn. So it's still those sort of things of the fact of, you know, he's getting the wisdom, and again, it all just works narratively. um, as well as sort of collectibles, you also get these things called pins that you can buy from the automatic, which is like a little kiosk shop that you can buy things. And the pins would change the game. You know, they would, each pin, you'd have like I think 3 or 4 pins that for each section for each ability. So you'd have one that would be for your side blast, there'd be one for your ball, so that you could jump and you could change the color of your ball, or you could jump high in the air and you can slam down on the ground. You could have more damage with your side attack or with your melee, or you can make your melee so instead of it being like a standard like karate chop, you could have it where like it's like flower power. You know, small things, silly things, and some things helped, some things were just like one of my favorite, I think, was called the Beast Tamer pin, and I had it for majority of the game until I got to the end and I was trying to get all the achievements I could. But basically, all it didn't change the game. It didn't make anything different. It was just every time you meet a creature in the wild, you could pet it with your telekinesis. You could just telekinet that pet a goat or pet a squirrel or something like that. It was just nice. You know, again, it was silly. There was no point to it. Again, it was silly. It was fun. It didn't need to be there, but it was there, and I appreciate that I got given the option that this was something that I could do, you know. But I'll be honest, near to the end of the game, I ended up swapping it out for a pin that gave me a discount at the automatic, and that a pin that doubled the amount of titanium, which is the currency that I get when looting around the world and from killing enemies, just so I could get the achievement where I could max out the most amount of titanium that I could own. So I get achievement for that. Then I could spend that money on fully upgrading my my dream fluff, which is another which is a consumable, and my lollipops, and how many? What was it? There was another one. Oh, I think it was my pocket, so I could hold more things. Either way, I just did that so I get all the achievements for there. One of the things that I again, this is the only downside I have about this game, because I don't, it's not even a downside, it's just a small little annoyance. Um, is the fact of you can only equip 3 pins at a time. They give you a multitude of pins, right? But they only allow you to have 3 pins at a time. And 1 pin slot was always filled because I wanted a green ball for the little hover ball that I run on and use when I sort of get around from level to level. I always wanted a green ball because I didn't like the orange one. So that was always taken. So that means I only had 2 slots left. And like I said, near to the end of the game, where I'd got all the achievements for buying things, all I used then was the one that sort of doubled the damage I did with my melee attack and doubled the damage I did with my side blast. And then that just helped as obviously near to the end of the game when the game got very, very difficult, and that I wanted to sort of do as much damage as possible so that the fights would end quicker without me getting so stressed. That I never really got to properly experiment. And by the time that I'd completed the game, even though there's one of the things I love about this game is that if you miss any of the collectibles or you don't have an ability, you can always come back to certain levels, and you can re-find all the collectibles and stuff like that. But apart from that, there was nothing left for me to do that sort of required me to use different pins. So the whole idea of me buying these pins and experimenting, didn't really happen. I mostly bought all the pins again just for the achievement. So that would be my only recommendation, if I'm being honest. If I'm ever that, if there's ever a chance that Double Fine or Tim Schafer listens to this, would be the only bit of criticism that I'd have is the fact of if there is a Psychonauts 3, allow me to use more pins. Even if you give me 4 to 5 pins, or you allow me to use all of them. So I unlock a pin, I then gain that ability, or that I can switch them out, but I have more slots. It doesn't have to be loads of slots, but even just give me an extra, like give me a 4th slot, give me 5 slots. That way I can sort of experiment, be like, oh, that ability, I didn't really like it. I've got a new pin now. I'm going to try that one out, but I've still got the pin. I've got enough pins here. So like I've got 3 pins that I'm really comfortable with and I like, and make the game sort of easier for me. That gives me then 2 slots to play around with. Even though it's only 2 slots, it's still 2 slots of experimentation. I would rather the 2 than just the 1 slot of experimentation. You know what I mean? So that would be my only sort of recommendation that I would give. If and when they make a Psychonauts 3, is just give us an extra slot or 2 to experiment with the pin system. Apart from that, the pin system is perfect and I enjoyed it. So that's the collectibles and that's the pins. Like I said, there's things hidden around the world. You've got side cards, and you find the side cards, and you've got side cores that you can buy from the shop. So you buy the side cores, and if you've got I think more than 9 side cards, you can combine them with the side cores, and that gives you a skill point, and that levels you up. And there's side cores hidden around the levels, so they level you up as well. So there's little things like that to find it throughout the world, as well as the story things and sort of side missions to find, which there's a lot of really fun, silly side missions. But sort of the point is just the whole point of the game is to explore. You know what I mean? Just explore to your heart's content. Explore people's minds. Explore the hub worlds. Just explore and have fun. That's the best sort of recommendation I can give, is just explore, have fun. Buy the pins, experiment when and where you can, because there's not a lot of room of experimentation, but experiment when and where you can. And yeah, so that's the collectibles, that's the pins. On to the enemies. The enemies are very, very big enjoyment of mine. I really, really enjoy these little guys, or big guys, shall I say, at times. So on to the enemies, the characters that you fight in this game. I really enjoy the enemies. Again, I know I keep bringing it up, but again, this is just how well done this game is. The enemies fit the narrative fantastically. Know what I mean? The whole idea of mental health, the whole idea of when you go into somebody's brain, everybody has the same sort of, even though we all think differently and we all have a different emotions, majority of our time, our emotions are the same, just the situations are different. So every time you go into somebody's mind, you can always find different enemies, and the AI in the enemy is so intelligent. Each enemy acts differently, but each enemy, the AI is done so well that as the game progresses, and as I mentioned, the game does get harder as it gets on. As the more you level up, and the further you get into the game gets quite difficult to a point where you have to watch everything. You'll have enemies like these things called sensors. Sensors will come at you with this giant sort of like what's it called, like a stamp that they would censor you with, like a just bop you with. So you've got to dodge them, but you've got normal sized ones, and you've got like mini ones, tiny little ones that like just swarm you. So you've got to take them out. Then you've got big sensors, really big brutes that are like, got knuckle dusters and just like will knock you out. So you've got to sort of dodge them and hit them. Also, you've got regrets that are flies that fly around the level and drop weights on you because they carry weights. Obviously, as a regret feels like a weight on top of you. So again, the whole idea of it's a fly, a regret is it flies around, it never goes away. Um, it carries a huge weight because regret. Some people carry regrets quite heavily, and it uses that weight to drop it on you. You've got doubts, which are like little balls of slime. Everybody knows when you feel when you doubt yourself, you feel sort of very sort of like you could melt. You know what I mean? It's and obviously with the game, it slows you down, holds you back, that sort of thing. And there's so much about it. Like as I mentioned earlier about the bad moods, the scribbles. It's just a scribble, but it's so deadly because it can hit you with like bad thoughts, and it can hit you with bad moods, and it will hit you with a question mark or hit you with an exclamation mark. It can send like a tornado of um, bad thoughts and fear towards you, and reduce your health. So you have to use your abilities, um, your clairvoyance to beat it, as I mentioned. And each enemy is the same. Like with the regrets, you've got to shoot them at the air, or you can use your telekinetic powers to grab the weight, to rip the weight from them, and you can either throw them at the regret, or you can throw that weight at another enemy. And like I mentioned, near to the end of the game, as the game gets harder, you do get swarmed by loads of different. So you get swarmed by regret, you get swarmed by sensors, you get swarmed by bad ideas. Bad ideas are like these little creatures that like um, throw like these red exploding light bulbs at you. Again, the whole idea of a bad idea. So they throw it at you, and if you don't move out the way, it will explode. Or, example, if you manage to dodge one, they might throw one at the ground, which acts as a landmine. So if you get too close to it, it blows up and damages you. So you've always constantly got to be aware of where the enemies are, what enemies you're facing, what abilities you have equipped, and what to use. So I always used to have the hover one. I always used to keep the telekinesis where I could grab things and throw them. I always used to keep the side blast. So what I would always have one spare with like, so depending on the enemy type. So with, for example, with Doubt, because they're slime balls, you'd have the pyrokinetics. So you'd upgrade. So what I used to do, upgrade the pyrokinetics so I could make it as big as a fireball as possible, and that fireball would then spread out, and it would melt these little doubts, and it would also catch fire to all the other enemies. So then you get some enemies where um, you needed to shoot them long range. So again, I'd have the side blast and I'd shoot them, and I'd upgraded that so that once it shot them, it would ricochet off them and it would hit multiple enemies and stuff like that. So you'd have to smartly use your abilities for each situation. And this is what I just love again about this game is that again it's so smartly done, and this is what you can do when you give a team money, when you give them proper funding and backing, and you leave them alone to just create. This is what the kind of stuff you get. And like I said, the enemies work so well with the narrative, and like every time that I'd get a new enemy where I would meet doubts, or I'd meet sensors, or I'd meet regrets, and these are just the base enemies that you meet, but you also meet one enemy who's really really annoying. It did my head in so much. Um, I can't remember. I forgot the name of it, but it's a small little gremlin sort of thing that's dressed up as like he's in a marching band. And what he does, I might remember the name as I explain it. But what he does, he will bolster up enemies. So basically, he will mentally project onto our enemies and make them immune. Kind of like how can I explain? It gives them support. Like, I was trying to think of the names if I can like manifest the name by explaining it, but the name's not coming to me. But basically, it will project onto loads of different enemies, and it will just make them immune to your attacks. So then you have to kill that little thing. The problem with that little thing, he's quick, and you can't always. He dodges your side blasts until you get really close. But if you get too close, he will get his little like foghorn sort of thing, and he'll go at your face, and he'll push you away. So now you've got to try and hit him. You've got to try and hit him, but not too close, but get close enough to attack him. So what I ended up having to do, I had to freeze him in place, bash the crap out of him as much as I can, and until like the time bubble thing wore out, and then I'd have to redo that. And the little guy did my head in. But that's kind of the whole point: is that you get these certain enemies that are annoying because they are naturally annoying, because a sensor and a regret is annoying. A regret just flying around you constantly, dropping weights on you, making is annoying. It's kind of fact, oh, you want to get rid of them, and they're very, very well done, very, very, very well done indeed. Um, but that's the enemies. That's the enemies. The game gets difficult. It does, but it is so much fun, and the characters and the narrative is done so well with the enemies that it's still fun. It's annoying and it's difficult, but it's fun. You know what I mean? And like one thing, and talk about difficulty. One thing that I forgot to mention is that this game has an accessibility assist in the settings. So you go into there and you can, for example, you can make yourself immune so that you don't take any damage whatsoever. You don't take any damage from um, enemies. You don't take damage from anything. If you fall into the water, it doesn't take any health off you. If you fall off the edge of a level, no damage. So that if you are finding the game too hard, you can just put this immunity assist on, and you can just play for the game, enjoy the story without having to worry about dying or the game getting too difficult. And stuff like that. And there's loads of other different. I didn't really sort of look into them a lot, but that was the one thing that when I looked into the assist, because I kept dying, and the game did recommend it. Like if you're struggling, if you go to the assist function into the settings, you can put immunity. And I looked into the settings, and even though I didn't use it, it was just nice to know that it was there. That if there's ever a moment where like the game got too stressful, the game got too difficult, or at any moment where I felt like, this game, I don't want to play it anymore because I can't do it, I could put the immunity system on, and I could just I could easily just breeze through the game without having to worry about it. And again, I like that feature, and I wish more games would do that. I know there's a stigma behind it, the whole idea that if you just get good, kid, you know what I mean? If you can't play it, it's your own fault. Just get better. And I'm like, well, no. There are certain people out there who don't like difficult games. The reason why a lot of people don't play Dark Souls and stuff like that is because they don't want to be punished. The whole point of a game to some people is to have fun, and if you're not having fun, then what's the point? You know what I mean? So to have that feature, to have for people who, for example, my brother who struggles at certain sort of games, especially as they start to ramp up and get harder near to the end. It's just nice knowing that he could switch that on, and that he could just enjoy the game for what it is and not worrying about getting killed all the time. I just really really like that sort of feature. Again, it's the accessibility. The whole idea of making the games accessible for everybody. It's just a lovely thing. And again, they didn't have to do it. They didn't have to add this in, but they did. And I have to give them respect for that. And to us, I have to give them respect for a lot of the things that they've done in this game, which I will get onto in a minute, because I'm getting to the overall thoughts now. So let's jump into the overall thoughts of this game, shall we? So finally, we're here. My overall thoughts and feelings on the game. Obviously, as I've gone through, I've already talked and explained about my thoughts, my feelings on why I love it, and all that jazz. But I really, really hope, fingers crossed, eyes crossed, legs crossed, toes crossed, everything I can cross, I'm going to cross it. I really hope for Psychonauts 3. Like I said, this game, obviously no spoilers, but this game ends so perfectly that it doesn't need another game, but I want one. You know what I mean? Like, again, I would be happy if, well, I wouldn't be happy, but I wouldn't mind if they said, okay, that's it, we're not doing Psychonauts again, we've told the story we want to tell, that's it, we're going to now go do something else. Okay, fine, because again, I love Double Fine, I love their games, I love what they do, I look forward to seeing what they do next. But I really want a third game. I really want a Psychonauts 3. Oh, to us, I really want I'd love DLC. Even if they don't do a number three, if they're like, okay, we're going to do DLC, because the game only came out in last year, around I think it was October, November last year, so it's still relatively new. So the potentiality of DLC, it's still pretty high, and with the Xbox showcase, uh, I think, is it the 3rd or the 6th of June, to look forward to. There's the potentiality that Double Fine, Tim Schafer could come out and be like, Psychonauts 2, you enjoyed it? Here's some DLC for it. You know what I mean? And it's getting released later this year. Or it could be the fact of, you like Psychonauts 2, we appreciate everything that everybody did and everybody enjoyed it. Here's a tease at what's next, and they do a tease, and it's Psychonauts 3. You know what I mean? There's a potentiality for it, and I got my fingers crossed that Double Fine shows up um, at the Xbox event, even if they don't talk about Psychonauts 3 or anything like that. Even if they go, we're making Brutal Legend 2, and Jack Black is coming back for Brutal Legend 2, I'll be like, shit, oh my god, I'd be panicking, like I will freak out. So there's a lot of hope here. There's a lot of hope for me for what Double Fine does next, and I have faith in them. I have faith in Tim Schafer. What himself and the team were able to make here was nothing short of a masterpiece, in my opinion. Generally, like I'm not big into platformers, but this game I enjoyed. I enjoyed the platforming. I enjoyed the story. I had real, true, genuine laugh. Like there were some laughs that were just incredible, guttural. Or there'd be moments where things would happen and I would laugh and I go, "What the fuck? What happened? What that? What? As I just sounded just there, that's basically how I reacted a lot of things. I was so confused, but I had so much fun. It didn't matter that I didn't know what was going on or why. It just was so much fun. Um, so in my opinion, this game is a masterpiece, and I highly recommend it to everybody. It's the best game I have played in a very long time. The most fun I have ever had with a video game since Guardians of the Galaxy, which is another game that I hope for a sequel to. I know Square Enix said that it didn't do as well as they hoped. But as we've seen recently with Square Enix, how they basically sold all of their Western properties and kept all of their Japanese properties, and that they're going into the NFT space. Well, we all know that Square Enix doesn't know what they're talking about, and I hope that now that Embracer have got sort of have got the license to Tomb Raider and Marvel the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, that those games will be improved. Well, not Guardians of the Galaxy, but Guardians of the Galaxy 2 will be made, and that if they ever make an Avengers game or if they make anything like that, it'll be improved or better. I've gone a bit of a side quest here. I do apologize, but the point is I'm trying to make is the fact of I read a report recently that Psychonauts 2 did way better than anybody thought it was going to do. It sold better. Not just that, this game's free on Game Pass. You don't have to buy it, but loads of people did. A lot more people bought it than apparently Xbox and Double Fine thought they would do. That was from an article I read quite recently, and it makes me smile to read that, because this game deserves all the love it gets. And as soon as I completed it, I was on Twitter, messaging friends who I knew hadn't played this game, and I said, "You've got to play Psychonauts 2. You have to play it. Like, it's free on Game Pass. Go download it, or even better yet, go buy it. Go fund the studio. You know what I mean? Like, just you've got to experience this." So and I said that to a lot of people, to a lot of friends, because it is true. You've just got to experience this game. This game has to be experienced, and so many more people have to go out and buy it and fund and help and support Double Fine and what they do. Like I said, I could sit here all day and just talk your ear off about how good this game is and how good Double Fine are. But the best way to really understand and to appreciate Double Fine is just to go out and play their games. Like I said, I recommend Costume Quest, Costume Quest 1 and 2. I think Costume Quest 2 is on Game Pass, which I haven't played because I never completed Costume Quest 1. but I will go back. I am planning this Halloween to go back and completing the first one and then playing the second one. But even so, that game was its own little small, little weird art style and weird story, but I very much enjoyed it. Brutal Legend, I highly recommend going to play that. They made a game that was incredibly wholeheartedly unique, um, but nobody seemed to talk about it anymore. But it was a game. It was a game called Stacking or Stacking, because the way my accent. Sorry, it's called Stacking. Um, Basically, it's think of Russian dolls. You know those Russian dolls where you open one and they get smaller and smaller and smaller, smaller dolls each time you open it. Think of that concept and that sort of world, and each one of them little stacking dolls is a character. And that, for example, if you want to get through security, you've got to you start off as a little small little stack person, and you've got to make your way through the level, and you've got to find a security guard and stack into him. It's kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers in a way, and you kind of have to solve puzzles by stacking certain people, by finding certain people in the world, and it's a great little unique um, concept. It's a fantastic little weird story, and again, it's different. It came out during the 360 days. Again, it was a game that um, it wasn't doing what everybody else was doing at the time, and that's Double Fine. They don't follow trends. They just do what they want to do. And again, that's my opinion. I might be completely wrong. I don't work at Double Fine, but from an outsider looking in and just seeing the games that they make, um, you can tell they do it. They have fantastic ideas and they do what they love and they stick to their guns as much as they can, and they just make some really fun, fantastic games. So I recommend you go out and play Psychonauts 2. I recommend you go out and play Psychonauts 1. Psychonauts 1 is Game Pass as well. Play through that and just play Double Fine. Any sort of Double Fine game. Support them as much as you can. And fingers crossed at this year's Xbox event that Double Fine and Tim Schafer comes out and announces to the world Psychonauts 3 or Brutal Legend 2 or some brand new fantastical game, whatever he may come out. Just fingers crossed Double Fine comes out and sort of knocks it out of the park. So, yeah, overall, if I had to give this game a rating out of 10, Psychonauts 2, 10 out of 10. Play it, complete it, enjoy it, experience it, embrace it. Wholeheartedly, 10 out of 10. Best game I played in a very, very long time. And I know it will be for everybody else who haven't played it yet. So, definitely 10 out of 10. Check it out. Let's get on to the end, shall we? So now we've finally reached the end. I hope you enjoyed this one. Well, as always, I hope you enjoy everything that I do. But I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope I convinced you, not just why Psychonauts 2 is an amazing game, but why you should, really just give it a go. Um, there's no harm in giving something a go, especially when it's on Game Pass and it's free. I'd still recommend, putting some money into it and just sort of supporting the studio as best you can. But like I say, it's free on Game Pass. You don't lose. You don't. If you don't like it, you don't lose anything. All you got to do is uninstall it. But I generally have full confidence that it'll be a game that you would enjoy, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are. It's a game for everybody. Simple and simple as that, and it's so good, so good. So I hope I convinced you in that. But yeah, so we're near the end now. I've got to do the whole sort of selfless sort of plugs. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod. You can find the podcast on Spotify. You can find the podcast on the Anchor app. And now, quite recently, a couple of days ago, I got verified so that you can find the podcast on Google Podcasts. So if you go to Google Podcasts and you type in the Nerdstalgic podcast, you should be able to see it there. If you don't, let me know. I have been having some issues with it myself. I still think, even though that I'm verified, it takes a few days before the podcast gets actually into the system, into the search function. But by the time this episode should be out, it should be working. But if it doesn't, sort of let me know. But yeah, you can find me on Google Podcasts. Don't forget to rate me on Spotify. If you listen on Spotify, don't forget to rate whatever you feel, one to 5 stars, whatever you feel like is fair. And yeah, that's about everything. So, hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I enjoyed it myself. And yeah, as always, stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.